definitely know it's a special night when you have some of the finest brain in finance in the same room, at the same place at the same time. Even when people have gone through some of the hardest months in the financial markets, these brains have stormed those waves and they are here today. And of course, we also have the opportunity to celebrate people who have gone through some of the most rigorous months of their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the second annual forecast dinner of the CFA Society Ghana. And of course, an evening where we celebrate our new charter holders. Please put your hands together for yourselves and thank you very much for coming. Lovely. My name is Prince Dagadu. When I'm not wearing a suit during the weekends, they call me the Regal MC, but I'll be nice with you on the corporate side, even as we have a nice evening. Please put your hands together for yourselves again if you're excited to be here. Lovely. So we'll begin this with an opening prayer, and to do that, I'll call on Edna Ahunu. Please put your hands together for Edna as she steps forward. Okay, I think she just stepped out. So, Papa Sam, yes. It's nice when the MC knows your name. Please come by and give us an opening prayer.
So let's pray. And so, Father, we thank you this evening for a time to meet, a time to deliberate, a time to celebrate. We ask that you steer this meeting, you guard and guide us, you order our steps, and at the end, glory and honor will be given to you. This and many other things we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much, Papa Sam. Awesome. So I'll just share a few housekeeping rules so we are aware this evening. So we have the washroom that's directly opposite the backdrop. You might have seen the CFA Society backdrop. Welcome in the washroom is directly opposite that, and if you need to use that, you can kindly go there. This event is being live streamed, which means people all over the world will be watching you. Just be sure not to catch yourself picking your nose because the world will get to know. Yes. But the good thing is that you also get to share the good things from this evening with the world. So we've asked our very hardworking coordinator, Ifrie, to share the stream link in the CFA Society group for those who are in the group. If you are not in the group, you can just go to YouTube, right, and find CFA Society Ghana, get the link from there. Please be kind to share it on your WhatsApp status, on social media, and whatever groups you are in. Let your work colleagues also get to benefit from this program. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to do that. Let's make this room bigger by getting the outside world in here. So while we do that, of course, it's a networking night, as well. You might have seen everybody in the name tag. So you can just identify somebody. Big deals will be made this evening. It's a good time to say amen. So just connect with somebody and let's make some money. At this juncture, I have the privilege of calling forward our leader and president, the CFA Society Ghana president and CIO of Access Pension Trust Limited. Please put your hands together for Nanawia Fubuama to give us the welcome address.
Good evening to everyone. It's truly an honor and privilege to stand before this gathering of accomplished CFA charter holders, CFA candidates, and astute financial professionals to give this welcome remarks. The CFA Institute mission is to lead the investment profession globally by promoting the highest standard of ethics, education, and professional excellence for the ultimate benefit of society. Finance, in my view, is the highest calling of mankind. Paraphrasing David Rubinstein, who claims private equity is the highest calling of mankind. To derive the sense of pride from finance, I enjoin you here to live by the CFA Institute mission. as we convene here today for our second annual Focus Dinner, it would be an honor. We'll be honoring our freshly minted CFA charter holders. Their journey to obtain the most prestigious three-letter designation, the CFA, is a testament to men and women who do not want to merely master the intricacies of finance, but also to embrace the commitment to ethics, diligence, and continuous learning. The pursuit of the CFA Charter represents a journey marked by rigorous education, continuous learning, and an unyielding commitment to the principles that underpin our financial market. Our entire financial industry in Ghana is at a crossroad today. We've seen years of hard work to build our investment industry go down the drain because of gross economic mismanagement, a financial sector cleanup that was poorly undertaken, and which to date has yielded only one successful prosecution, and capricious government domestic debt exchange program, which has killed government access to medium and long-term CD capital. All these have led to investors losing money amidst general lack of confidence in investing. Notwithstanding the above problems and challenges, I believe we can build back better. Other countries have gone through similar experience and have built back better. I think high finance is a North American game, so permit me to use some few North American examples. The US went through the excesses of the S&L and real estate crisis in the 90s. Bernard Madoff scammed investors of billions of USDs. Alan Stanford squandered billions of deposited money in the Stanford Bank. The financial crisis in 2007 through to 2009 threw global economies in deep abyss. Despite all of the above, we've seen finance and investment thrive even more in the last 15 years since the Great Financial Depression than in any other decade. So we can restore the broken wall of trust within our industry if we will all, including our regulators, commit ourselves to excellence, professionalism, and integrity in our dealing. In today's rapidly evolving economic landscape, the need for astute finance professionals has never been more pronounced. The challenges we face require collective sharing of ideas, knowledge, and commitment to stay ahead of the curve. This Focus Dinner serves as a testament to our shared pursuit of knowledge, innovation, and the collective ambition to elevate the financial industry to new heights. Over the next 2 hours, we have the unique opportunity to engage in thought-provoking discussion on ethics and governance. Ajay Boateng will share his forecast on the macros with us. During Ajay's presentation, let us be guided by the words of John Kenneth Galbraith. There are two kinds of forecasters, those who don't know and those who don't know they don't know. Pick from Howard Marks, CFA, the chairman of Oaktree, one of the largest alternative asset managers. In his 2022 memo titled Illusion of Knowledge, Mr. Mark does not believe in macro forecast, and I share the same view. Hopefully, AJ will do an awesome job beyond just throwing some macro numbers, at us. Before I take my seat, I'd like to use this opportunity to thank one of our dedicated volunteers, Elikem. He's having a call outside. Elikem is the treasurer of our society. He's been embarking on his MBA at Cornell University Johnson Graduate School of Management. Many would have given excuse as to why they cannot combine volunteering in the CF Society with rigorous academic work, family demands, and corporate internship. But not Elikem. Elikem, please accept our greater thanks for the service to the CF Society Ghana. Today, we would also honor one of our very own and our senior brother, Mr. Clifford Mpare, upon whose shoulders the CFA Society stands today. I'll use this opportunity to call for more volunteers to help champion the mission of the CFA Institute in our local market. Your current jurisdiction should not be a barrier, as Sandra, the chairperson of our membership committee, and Elikem have demonstrated. We also need urgently, right now, 10 volunteers who would serve as mentors for our 2024 research challenge. If you are interested to serve in any capacity in our society, kindly give your name when we go on our dinner break. I also want to implore all of us to renew our membership if we haven't. The CFA Society membership is not an exclusive right for only CFA charter holders, right? We'll be happy for everyone in this room to join our growing membership community. The opportunities and the benefits for members are limitless. As we embark on this journey of intellectual exchange, let us remember the core value that unite us as finance professionals and CFA charter holders: integrity, professionalism, and commitment to the highest ethical standard. Together, let us explore the frontier of finance, seek innovation solutions, and strengthen the bond that make us a formidable community of finance leaders. May this conference be a source of inspiration indeed, and a catalyst for the continued success of each and every one of you. Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Please appreciate him with a hand clap. Awesome. You know, the next job was to invite somebody to give us the market forecasts. After hearing the president's words, I don't know whether he's changed his mind about it or he would want to go ahead. Well, I'm called to be the MC and I'll do my job anyway. So up next we have somebody to look into the crystal ball with that. This is a crystal ball which has a very rough surface, not like the smooth ones you see in the movies, because we are where we are, right? But we trust this man to do a good job because he's the CIO, Chief Investment Officer, and heads the asset management division at Black Star Group. Before joining the Black Star team in Ghana, not the football team, he served as a portfolio manager, research and performance analyst with over 8 years of industry experience in the United Kingdom. He worked with Barclays Wealth and Investment Management and Lion Trust Asset Management before coming to Ghana. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Economics, Finance, and Banking. He also has an MSc in Finance and Investment from the University of Bristol, UK. He holds the Investment Management Certificate, Units 1 and 2, and is a CFA charter holder. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Ajay Boateng, CFA. Put your hands together.
That made me sound better than I am. So, can you touch the screen up there? So my name is Ajay, and I have 78 pages and around 2,100 seconds to go through it. So a lot has happened. I'm just waiting for them to, post it on there. A lot has happened, and I think Nana called it, which is we've hit an inflection point in our history. And that inflection point is like, it's our medicine, but the patient sort of needed it. And throughout my presentation, I'll share a couple of things which I think are fundamental sort of characteristics of our country and many similar countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So guys, give me a heads up when you're ready. Great. So an inflection point. I'll go through a couple of things. There's a future framework which I will share with you. It's not something that I've actually gone through with my boss Eric, who's here, but it's something that I sort of spend a lot of time thinking about. It is based on a presentation that Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, co-founder of Palantir, sort of gave about 10 years ago. It's around how we sort of think and look into the future. I'll recap briefly 2023, go into some macros. Although all the macros in here, we're all aware, so I'll try and put a little bit of a twist to it to try and make it more exciting. And then we'll go into some forecasts, and I do agree with Howard Marks. He's one of my mentors. So, really is as good as the papers they're written on, but albeit we will have a look. AI, and then some undeniable trends. Now, the undeniable trend, when we get there, I think we should pay more attention to. So, the future framework basically is based on a presentation Peter Thiel gave around 10 years ago. Yes, and okay, great. So the future framework is generally how to look into the future, right? And as a group, as an individual, as a portfolio manager, as a region, as a country, is whether we have a certain view of the world or we have uncertain view of the world. Or, and on the other side, whether we are hopeful about the future or we're actually quite fearful. Now, depending on how you are, how you behave, it has a direct implication in terms of how you allocate capital as a portfolio manager, but as a country as a whole, how we think into the future as well. So, from the bottom quadrant, so when we are certain, we will move with conviction, right? But on the other hand, when we have no idea of the future, we don't like taking risk, and the best we could do is just diversify too much. So if we go back all the way to when Ghana gained independence, our leader at the time, he knew exactly how he wanted the country to be. In 1960s, he was talking about nuclear power, Akosombo Moda, Kwame Nkrumah's University of Science and Technology. At that time, he knew how the world was going to be. And then the other quadrant is whether when we are hopeful, we have a promise of the future, something that we're looking forward to. But when we're fearful, we sort of have an anxiety. The way to look at it is that when we are hopeful, in terms of what we study in school, we tend to go into engineering, art, because there's a specific things and specific problems that we are trying to solve. But in a world where we are uncertain, but we're still a bit hopeful, law and finance tends to dominate. But where we are fearful and we have no idea, actuarial science, insurance, and that type of thing tends to dominate. And then wartime rationing, where will be when we are fearful and uncertain and very certain that nothing is going to happen. So during wartime, food rationing and some things like that. So when you go back into various countries, so Ghana during the first sort of couple of years will be seen as we were very hopeful and certain, we had a clear sense of direction. Now when you put the same framework, we're somewhere, we don't really know where we're going, and there's a sense that, you take your kids to school to try and get them through, it's almost like an insurance policy, because there's not a direct thing that we're trying to solve for. Why did I share this? It's like the way we manage portfolios in Ghana could be classified into some of these boxes as well. So in a certain world, we know exactly what we are trying to invest in. So today, for example, if Kwame Nkrumah was alive and came to us that, hey, there's a lithium that's been discovered in the central region, we're going to dig it ourselves, and as such, I want all the pension to bring money so that we can actually do this and build the capacity in here. Your responses will be, how much would they yield, right? Now that itself, we might not think that is a bad question, but in reality, the actual full value far surpasses whatever you could get from the yield when you are locked in a fixed income, right? So it's about seeing the picture, the wider picture. So that framework will sort of form a theme throughout the rest of the presentation. So 2023 is pretty much a year for the ages. What do I mean by that? A lot of years are not often remembered. So if I think about 2017, there's not something really significant that sticks out in my head. 2015, 2004, 1974, 1950. But when I put 2020, everyone will remember it for COVID. 2008, financial crisis. 1957, if you're Ghanaian, remember Ghana's independence. 1914, First World War. 2023 would often be remembered as the year of AI. Maybe in 100 years' time, we will look back and say 2023 was when the world became aware of AI. But if you're also in Ghana, there's a painful thing that you always remember. It was the year that DDEP came in and it hurt a lot of our purchasing power and also the way we manage money. So the question around risk-free has been a conversation that comes a lot whenever you are sort of having an engagement because of the nature of how the country sort of debt structure has unveiled itself. Now, it's a very, very simple framework. Can you go to the next page? So it's really simple. Like, we've given a couple of countries in Africa, basically investment grade. So the concept of risk-free dates all the way back to the 16th century, around 18th century, the concept of allocating capital to low-risk assets were all sort of being talked about. But it wasn't until Markowitz's modern portfolio theory around 1952, 1954-ish, that it started really making its way into academic writings. At that time, Ghana was not even like independent yet, right? Why am I saying that? Really, the concept of risk-free is often associated with high-quality investment-grade countries with a stable government, right? Now, all you had to do was just look at Ghana's track record in terms of our credit ratings, and you would have picked this up. The highest rating we've got to was like B+. So in all of our history, we've always been pretty much junk studies. So there cannot be a situation where a junk studies bond is being seen as a risk-free. The risk was always there. So go back one. So CFA Society, is it a missed opportunity in terms of if you go forward? So we had the Association of Bankers all sort of making a point in terms of what they wanted from the DDEP, the accountants, the Chambers of Trustees, all making a point. And we have been fairly silent as a group of individuals who are highly qualified in our industry. But I still think it's not too late. I'm of the belief that it's better to have the last mover rather than being the first mover. Why? The moment you look at the way the debt has been structured, and I'll have a slide, it becomes apparent immediately that 2027, 2028, there's a real problem. And given everything, one of my recommendations from this is that we do actually write a report in terms of what we see in terms of the pension and what we should actually go about, because in about 3 to 4 years' time, I'm sure we'll be back to where we were 4 years ago. So the last mover is actually, I would think Nana Weafi did it on purpose. We're just observing. So as a class return generally, so in USD-wise, technology last year was where to be. But Ghana equity actually, if you take away Bitcoin, was actually like the 4th best performing asset in terms of asset classes that we track at Blackstar. So in dollar terms, we did almost like 15%, which is actually quite good, right? Now, on the back of what happened last year, obviously, investors were looking for other ways to diversify. But because of the DDP, our bonds were right at the bottom. So we go back to the one before. In dollar terms. So if you move forward again, in cities, you could see, go forward one. So in cities, it looks really blown out. Again, there is an embedded sort of risk in here, which is outlaid in here, and that's our currency, which I'll talk about further down the line. So domestically, GSC, one of the best years we've had in quite some time. But the financial index in terms of financial sector as a whole didn't have a really good year on the back of obviously lots of impairments. And it also exposed them a little bit in terms of the role of a bank was not being sort of executed properly in our country. Black side, we have a non-financial index and it did very well. And I've actually put MTN on here because when you think about it, MTN is actually the biggest bank in Ghana, right? With over 12 million customers on Momo, right? A lot more efficient, a lot more, you know, it just addresses so many like things that clients need in terms of reach and other things. And MTN also raises a point in terms of, and I'll come down to it later, in terms of the fourth industrial revolution and whether the role of a bank as we know it still makes sense or not. So macros, now when it comes to inflation, we all know a lot. And to understand inflation properly, there's a quote from Ernest Hemingway, which is the first panacea of for a mismanaged nation is inflation of the currency. The second is war. Both bring temporary prosperity, but both bring a permanent ruin. So a case study for inflation. So we have a group of 4 friends who have been investing for the last sort of 30 years. Kofi, Ernest, Emmanuel, and Elvis. Now, over the last 30 years, they've all been contributing a lot of money. They've made their monthly contribution. No other income during retirement because they've been promised by the various trustees and the fund managers that they're doing a pretty good job. And during retirement, they have 3 dependencies. So let's track their performance over time. So the first 10 years, in nominal terms, they've actually generated around 1,400, almost 1,500%. But actually, when we overlay inflation on top of it, we've actually, in real terms, have only done 3% in the first 10 years. If we fast forward it to 20 years, we've actually done over 700%. Oh, sorry, 7,000. I beg your pardon. But again, once we do it in real terms, and the asset being used here is treasuries, right? Treasuries, which, and I use that on purpose in the sense that, in all honesty, so far it hasn't been touched yet. So assuming you had a foresight and had been only allocating towards treasuries, this is literally the best you could have got because we all have a rough idea in terms of how our equity markets had done over the time period. Well, not to go on about it, in 30 years during their retirement, it looks like they've got almost 45% return. But because of what happened in the last 2 years, in real terms, they've only got 65% return. So we might sort of tap ourselves in the back a fair bit and say, hey, we've done a great job, 44,000%. But in reality, for 30 years, we've only been able to give them 65% real returns. Now, long gone are the days where we said, oh, there wasn't any alternative. Based on the work that we've done, and I know Emmanuel at EDC and others have also been doing a lot of work, we're now at a point where every investment that's available to everyone else in the world is available to Ghanaians, right? Now, this performance is down to us in this room to make something about this, right? So the end result, what you see is on the right. Pensioners Association urges government to improve retirement. right? So there's a huge disconnect, right? So we as portfolio managers and decision makers, we'll be looking at nominal returns and thinking, hey, like, we've done a pretty good job here. But in reality, we've actually condemned these people after 30 years of consistent savings. So what's the lesson here? Well, you know, it's midnight and all the cows are black. So what do we need to do? We need to actually diversify. And I know some of the trustees are aggressively doing this. Currency doesn't give us any additional hope either. Let's keep going. So in terms of currency, everyone looks at it differently, but I did an inverse of the currency since the redenomination. So in terms of since we redenominated the currency, the city has actually lost 92% of its value since 2007. Now, when you go back over the last sort of 20, 22 years, when you go, yes, there hasn't been like a single period in the last 22 years where we've had a year where the city appreciated, right? It's almost as true as the laws of physics that the currency is going to depreciate. Now, it turns out like this is actually fairly predictable, right? So there's a rule of 70, which is if you do a trailing sort of average inflation over the last 6-7 years, and you divide it by 70, it often sort of gives you a very good indication of how long it would take for your money to halve, right? So it turns out you can also follow the same track and look at the money supply side of things in terms of year-on-year monetary increase and be able to pick up certain things from that. So once we do that, we realize that actually, when you look at the developed countries, right, normally the year-on-year money increase, M2 increase, is actually around 3.5. Because of COVID and the sheer amount of money the US sort of actually printed in that time period is actually what is inflated at, right? Middle income sort of emerging market countries like South Africa have around 9.1%, but on Ghana we are flirting around 30% year-on-year increase in money supply. In fact, in the last 2 years, we've gone as high as 40%, right? The end result, you can extrapolate that. So it takes, once you apply that and you look at the M2 or the 70 divided by your inflation rate, you end up at a number where in about 90 years, your dollar is worth zero. Sorry, it should be South Africa. I got kicked. We can't get away from Nigeria. So it takes about 31 years. And then in Ghana, it's about 23. So in 23 years, if you haven't done anything with your money in terms of cash, your city is worth zero. So in terms of forecast wise, this is what we came here for. And let's go. So this year is obviously an election year. Half of the world population is going through election, Ghana being one of them. This is my first time in my adult life that I've been in Ghana during election year. And in the last 3 months, what I've seen has blown my mind. So it's also, I'm a bit sad about it, to be honest, as someone who wanted to come back and also contribute. When I observe what is happening, it is really like discouraging in terms of the last couple of months. It's just not ideal. So in terms of the wider pictures, the US, inflation is dropping, but I am a bit skeptical because of what is happening in the Middle East. Wars tends to drag on. We're already seeing from Russia, Ukraine, what is happening with the Houthis, Lebanon, Iran, Palestine. I mean, depending on where your views are, it's like, it's a very sensitive thing, but wars tends to drag on quite longer than most people anticipate. And in the world that we're in, you cannot talk about superpowers without actually paying attention to China. They're competing with the US on semiconductors. I have a view that by 2030, half of all cars in Ghana could be electric, majority dominated by BYD. Their cars are that good. And often when I say these things, people's views are that the infrastructure isn't there. But in 6 months, they could sort out the infrastructure. It's not actually that complex. And then the second question that you often get is that, but have you not seen ECG? No, it will be done off grid, because one of the research that we've come up to at Blackstar is that you cannot transition into a fourth industrial revolution era while still relying on a second industrial revolution energy source. It doesn't work, right? You have to try, and in Ghana, we are positioned for solar, battery, and then wind. We are ideal. So I did the numbers, and about 99% time throughout the year, Ghana can rely on solar. And, you know, the last sort of 2 weeks or so, there's been a conversation around taxes, around, really, there's a new business model that's emerged. In the last 20 years, the cost of battery in terms of lithium-ion battery storage has declined by over 90%. So how about Ghana? Let's go through quickly, because I'm almost halfway. So let's go. So I think it's going to be dominated by these few things: geopolitics, money supply, exchange rate, election, IMF. I've actually put AI in here. I think it's going to be a bigger component. Productivity, fiscal deficit, but domestic substitution. It seems like we talk a lot, but can't seem to execute much in terms of how we go about things. So one of the things that I did was I went as far back as we have data in terms of our inflation. And what I did was plotted the 5-year moving average of how inflation is actually trending, right? And what you see is that, like, despite the hardship that we've gone through over the last 2 years, our rolling average inflation has actually been trending downwards. We might not sort of feel it like that, but on average, actually, we haven't been doing that bad. And then when you go back into history-wise, you get a sense that most countries have gone through some of these periods of high inflation. It's just whether we can actually use that to transition into doing things that are a lot more sustainable in the economy. So you go back a couple of times. So in terms of this one, we looked at election year and how inflation tends to, and how currency tends to behave. And our expectation is that, given the downward trend, on average, inflation around 15% or so is expected. But again, I agree with Nana and Howard Mark, which is it's only as good as the paper you write it on. Why? Because there are so many unknowns. I believe that geopolitics will play like a much bigger role. Bonds-wise, in terms of this is what we looked like before we had the DDEP. Now, I want you to pay attention to 2023 and the subsequent years. So go to the next page. This was what I was talking about. 2027, 2028. It's inevitable that we will need another conversation around DDEP. And for me, this is a bigger problem, in the sense that how do we manage this, right? Now, if you are a trustee, if you're a decision maker, we have to diversify. And as I mentioned, I know EDC, we ourselves, we've done a lot of work in terms of bringing new assets into the country. And as I said, for the first time in our history, any investment that's available to everyone else in the world is available to you. And often when I sort of share these views, that can be quite overwhelming, because, like, where do you start? Right? So I encourage all of us to actually really learn a lot more. There's a slide that I put together, but it's not here. In doing this, I actually sort of went to Africa, other African countries, and I realized that some of the most forward-looking sort of the countries that seems to be doing really well have actually been allowing their pensions to actually go into the global market. So Mauritius, for example, allow up to 70% of their pension to invest abroad. Countries like Kenya allow 15%, South Africa 25%, Namibia around 30%. Now, obviously, in our side, we were allowed 5%, but we haven't actually exhausted that 5% yet. But and then when you go through some of these things and some of the challenges we have, what you realize is that one of the countries that we have to really study is actually Mauritius. So currently it's seen as like the 15th best country in terms of ease of doing business. It's worth a study. So in terms of inflation, currency and inflation wise, I think these are some of the geopolitics, money supply, election can be a factor, imported inflation. In terms of, go back one. Yeah, so we are literally in the treasury market. You cannot do anything, although going into next year, you can expect some trading activity in terms of the new bonds to pick up. Now, there's an alarming thing, which I saw one of our colleagues within the CFA Society group pick up yesterday, which was like the nature of how the treasuries are being sort of used could potentially sort of raise a problem. Now, it's there in the sense that because they now shut off the international market, the only thing that is left now is the domestic treasury. That can have a principal agent sort of problem because, you know, rates need to come down, but actually they might need to sort of keep it at a higher rate to make it more attractive. But then if you're a portfolio manager or decision maker, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because what else do you do, right? So that's fixed income wise. In terms of where to look at, it looks like the short side of things is where people are looking. So treasuries. One of the things that has really surprised, most of us, is that the few corporate bonds that we have in our market actually, in a difficult year, have actually held themselves pretty well. And perhaps it's about time we have like a different conversation in terms of during the most difficult of times, if these companies were able to make the obligation, is it not time we look at them in a completely different way? You know, if you take a company like MTN, there's no way MTN is riskier than the government of Ghana. It just doesn't make sense. So equities, I won't spend too much time on it, but in terms of equities, it's a conversation between the financials and then the non-financials. You know, at Blackstar, we had a very intense conversation around this in terms of where are we going, given the nature of how beaten down they were from last year. The view was that, like, okay, you can expect some recovery, right? Given the you know, how discounted they're all trading. But then another argument was that, look, they would need to all recapitalize, right? And it's going to be in that era, then if all of them comes to market, then really you cannot really get the prices you want. In terms of, there might be the case where because of that, the need for that recapitalization, really valuation might actually not sort of pick up in a way that we intended to. Now, if you look at it, where the majority of the companies listed on our exchange are actually financials, and if they all come to market trying to recapitalize, where's the money coming from, right? Too many deals chasing very few money. The end result is that our views are that actually because of that, sorry, can you keep going through? So I won't go through much on it. We just went through the impairments that they've incurred over the last couple of years. Go to the next one. And the next one. So, and then the final one. The conclusion we made is that actually the non-financials is actually a place to be still. Why? So the handful, well, it's MTN. And one of the reason why I shared the view of into the future in the beginning was that if you have a view of the future and you understand MTN well, you hold on to it in the aim that actually it has a monopoly, you know, it has economies of scale, network effect, and as such, give or take, it is still a good company. They got a good track record of paying dividends. So go to the next page. And as such, you might hold, but if you have no view of the future at all, you know, the word I've heard a lot is like you crystallize your gains. I only sort of started using that term when I came to Ghana. So undeniable trends are the next bit. So at Blackstar, the way we sort of look at investment is to have a thematic sort of view in terms of technology is literally disrupting every industry that we know. And the framework that we use is this. We do a lot of sort of study around industrial revolution and the kind of innovation that often come out at the end of it. So we went through first industrial revolution, looked at energy, communication, mobility, steam, the telegram, locomotion. Now, the era around telegram is very interesting. Those who have time, I think it's worth a study. Second industrial revolution, fossil fuel replacing coal steam. Telephone, the radio, the TV replacing the telegram as we know it. The telegraph. And then the ICE, internal combustion engine, replacing locomotion and other things. Now, because of climate change and other things, it's now undeniable that the fourth industrial revolution is going to be renewables. The cost of installing battery and solar is actually cheaper than the capex of operating a fossil fuel plant. It's a no-brainer. And so the cheapest cost of energy is getting cheaper, right? There's no way back. IoT, so we now don't need to get anybody to tell us when to watch TV or when to communicate. As we're doing this presentation, it's now being live streamed. Anyone who's interested can watch it. Previously, you would need sort of Ghana Broadcasting to actually, what's it called? Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Yes, you needed that. And now, because of the work that Tesla, BYD, and others are doing, electric vehicles are going to be the way. BYD is likely to replace Toyota as the leading exporter. The trajectory is there. One of the remarkable things that is actually unveiling itself is that the old giants in terms of German manufacturers and Americans are actually falling behind on this thing. And when you look at the policies being adopted, actually it's only going to lead them further back. Right, so they're now sort of trying to push it back. So it's like running around, doing a 100-meter sprint with Usain Bolt and giving him 50-yard a head start. There's no catching them. So when you look at the last sort of couple of years since 2008, the largest sort of companies in the world were mostly like energy companies. But when you fast forward it, since 2013, really, the largest companies in the world have mainly been technology sort of companies. So if you fast forward that into last year, so as we speak today, I think Microsoft has now overtaken Apple as the largest company. Saudi Aramco is still there, but actually when you pay attention to them, they're still aggressively, NVIDIA is now in here. So this was a few months out of date, but at a few months back, this was the standing. And when you look at the trajectory of the world, like literally, it's undeniable. So much so that like everyone is now a technology company. JP Morgan, we're a technology company. Goldman Sachs. Eric Appiah from Blackstar, we're also a technology company. Now, there's a reason for this, in the sense that in the new world, in the fourth industrial revolution, you cannot have a business where it only operates during working hours, right? 3 a.m., people should be able to get access to your service. And these are some of the undeniable sort of trends that we're looking at. So AI at the core, cybersecurity, semiconductors, battery storage, robotics, cloud infrastructure. So in the era of AI, the large cloud companies are really dominating everywhere. Electric vehicles, online gaming, IoT, and then blockchain activities as well. So I whisked through the last couple. So 2023, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the year of AI. Like literally every problem in the world is being recasted as an AI problem. You cannot get away from it. I have been an investor in Tesla for a very, very long time. And I've been following their development. In 2 years, they've been able to develop a robot. They started from zero, and in 2 years, they've developed a robot that two days ago released that can fold your clothes. And they just watched someone else doing it, and within like a few sort of days, it's able to fold your clothes, right? We are now heading towards a world of abundance where those who don't need to work might not need to work. So it's a whole new economic system that we will need to sort of look at. So these are some of the companies that we're looking at. So in terms of the major sort of conferences in the world, these are some of the companies who are often presenting around the work that they're doing. And I think the giants are actually learning from innovators' dilemma, where disruptors come and sort of disrupt them. But what they're now doing is that Microsoft tapping directly into OpenAI. So ultimately, Microsoft own OpenAI now. And in the world that we're in, you cannot have a portfolio construction where Microsoft isn't part of it, because we're all using it. I pay the pro version. One of the biggest areas that I think we will see the benefits is healthcare. Healthcare, both in the US, in the UK, are actually quite poor. Here, it's like non-existent. In fact, since I came to Ghana, like, I don't have children yet, but access to education and healthcare is probably my biggest headache. So with Advent and some of the companies that we're following at Black Star, and they form a core part of some of the portfolios that we've constructed, there's a lot of companies using proprietary data, and then sort of going into healthcare space. I think we probably see the biggest disruption there. In terms of some of the work we're seeing also, I think life expectancy currently around sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, we expect that life expectancy to move from around 65 to about 85. Why? Because we're now at a point where you can now monitor the exact way that your body deals with anything that you put in your body. So there's an app called Zoe where you just put it on your arm and it tracks it on your phone, where anything you eat, it gets tracked and it will feed it to you that, hey, maybe if you eat too much jollof rice, it might not be that good, but fried rice is better. Right. So in the developed countries where their life expectancy is actually already high, I think it's going to be common to start seeing people living above 110, 115 in the next, like children being born now could be expected to live so that long. So when I have conversation with Eric, one of my things is that I just need to make sure I don't do anything stupid for the next 5 years, so that at least when this thing comes, you can be around to at least also benefit from it. Because the cost of actually these things are coming down in a way that is unseen. And a lot of it is convergence of multiple platforms. So we do sort of do a fair big. There's a book that's written on GPTs, the general purpose technologies. That's quite insightful, and it gives you a framework in terms of when these industrial revolution can sort of happen. With these, like, we're now sort of going from a reactive state in terms of healthcare to a more proactive state. And then when you combine it with what CRISPR has done with DNA sequences, so the cost of DNA sequencing a few years back was like over 100 million, right? That cost in about 13 to 15 years has come down as low as $600 now, and it's going down. So in the next maybe 2 to 3 years, it's going to be very common for, if you have a health insurance at the beginning of the year, your health, your work or your doctor will ask you to go and get your DNA sequence. And as such, when any of your DNA is changing, editing, they can tap it into it quickly. And with CRISPR, they can now go into it and correct it. It's literally humans playing gods. And some of the, there's a really good program on Netflix called Human Nature that goes into it. If you get a chance, look at it. So it turns out we're not too dissimilar from pigs, but one or two of our strands of DNA actually means that if you get given a pig's liver or heart, your body will reject it. But what CRISPR and genome sequencing is able to do is that they can actually sequence your DNA and give it to alter a pig's DNA in such a way that if we now give you a pig's heart to you, your body will not reject it. So you can live and sort of drink as much as you want very soon. And then when you're about 60 or 70, you just can go for all new vital organs. So moral hazard there. So another one is education. You know, the cost of good education in Ghana is very, very expensive. For those who want one, AI will disrupt that in terms of by quality. Already, if you look at Khan Academy and the work that they're doing, so every individual will be able to have a teacher that's tailored to the way they learn. And there are a lot of work is already going on. So if you have young ones, Khan Academy is currently, I think you can pay like $10 a month, and they will literally give your child an AI that tracks where they should be and be able to sort of teach them along the way. AI will disrupt travel and tourism. Already I used it. So the last time I went to London in May last year, I was able to give it a few details in terms of what I wanted to do, and it was able to find my flight, book it, arrange for all the things I needed to do when I was in London. So these areas will be disrupted too. And I will conclude with this: in the new era we've entered, you cannot afford to have a portfolio construction that doesn't have AI at its core. Do that at your own peril. That's all I wanted to share with you. I'll take a couple of questions if anyone has. Yeah, I'll take 2 questions if anyone has any. Yeah. Sorry, can you say your name and then?
Thanks. My name is George Ba. Thank you for the presentation. Very insightful. Thanks. My question is regarding the maturities in 27, 28. At the moment, I believe you are to invest about 70%. The pension, the trustees, they are supposed to invest about 70% into government securities, if I'm not mistaken. So given what we see ahead of us, what we've gone through, and the analysis you showed, how you lose money over time. And as you also indicated, it's at the moment 5%. Although the opportunity to invest outside is there, but the constraint is that you can only do up to 5%. But I take the point that you mentioned that we are not up to that 5% yet, so there's room. But what can we do to perhaps engage the regulator in the pension space, particularly, to possibly allow for a greater percentage of the portfolio to be invested in securities other than government of Ghana? Thank you.
So my knowledge on the hard limits and flaws of in terms of the allocation is not as extensive as someone like Nana. So I allowed Nana to chip in at some point. But what I understand is that they didn't put a hard floor that this is the minimum you have to put in government bonds, right? They gave a range, and from what I gather, I wasn't here at the time, but upon 3-4 years ago, the fund managers and the trustees went back to try and actually increase the limit because of how much they were enjoying from the fixed income side. But Nana, in terms of his other questions around how do we engage and what sort of steps do we need to do to actually engage the trustees, the regulator, to get to a point where actually the 5% allowance is actually being increased. Because from my engagement with yourself and some of the trustees, I think when they reached out to the MPRA, the response was, we've given you 5%. That 5% you haven't done. So go and do that 5%, and then we talk. But I think it's really urgent. I think one of the things that we should do as a society, I think we should write our views in terms of going forward, what our recommendations are, right? And if the regulators don't listen and actually implement that, I'm fairly confident about 3-4 years, we'll be like, well, we advised that this is what you should do, and you didn't do it. So maybe we need to really sit down again. But Nana, I don't know whether you have anything else, because you do a fair bit of engagement with the.
I think you've answered the question, but then within the constraints of available, assets we have in the country, there are so many opportunities for diversification, right? So Blackstar has their EEB, whatever, mutual fund that invests globally, right? And there's so much we can do in mutual funds, right? Let's talk about, IC securities. They have, an Africa-wide, Euro fund. You can invest in that to diversify, right? Stanbic, has some offshore mutual fund. I mean, they run together with their affiliate, I mean, in Jersey. So there are opportunities, I mean, to diversify. We are just not exploring the frontier of diversification that much. Casa is on the market looking for money. Probably, I mean, struggling, right? But we are comfortable giving money to government because no fund manager here will be sacked from buying government bond. But if you buy a Casa corporate bond and it goes bad, gun on your head. So there are opportunities to diversify within, I mean, the constraint. And like AJ said, there's no, I mean, flaw on government securities. You can actually go, I mean, 10% given the opportunities in other asset classes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also know that the guys, Emmanuel at EDC, they've also introduced a few other diversification sort of products. So, when you look at the guidelines, what you're allowed to do with CISs and the 5%, if you're really nifty, that alone, by the time you finish, you could have 20% diversification there already, right? So, and as I engage other fund managers, there are already enough product to diversify your portfolios to a point where at least 20% of it. And I'm quite inspired by what some of the trustees are doing. So I see two branches of trustees emerging, right? So there are some who have sort of looked at what has happened in the last 2-3 years and are aggressively sort of trying to diversify. And I think future, their decision will be rewarded if you look at the kind of asset allocation and the decision that they're making. And there are some who are still, they still got familiarity bias, which is they don't want to really listen and sort of go that way. I think myself and a few others are really pushing to sort of bring some of these on board. So I think given time, we will make some progress. But I think one of the things that has sort of surprised me, I think going forward, we have to be a bit more vocal as a society. We have to literally, and I was thinking about this where a few years ago, I used to say, but these people cry, they're not doing this. These people, they're not doing this. And then I checked myself that actually, I and everyone else in here, we are at the point where we are supposed to be the people who are actually making this decision. Otherwise, our children might curse us for not doing. And a final caveat on this, right? Because we did some work on this. Our inability to diversify and actually grow the real wealth of pensions and our investors means that once people retire, the money that should have been passed on to the next generation, actually there's nothing. So you're often sort of left struggling, right? Because your parents haven't been able to really leave you anything. On the other side, it's not like that, right? Where because of the way they have access to sort of investment grade tech exposure and other alternatives, private equity and other things, someone could retire and, they'll start funding startups because they've got so much money, right? So I think we as a society need to be a bit more vocal. And I think we do need to sort of as a group put some sort of report together in terms of our recommendation on the back of everything that's happened. And I'm a big believer it's better to be the last mover rather than the first mover. Any other questions before? There's room for one more question if anyone hasn't. Yes, madam. Sorry, can you? Sure.
The Department of Economics at the University of Ghana.
Sure.
Thank you very much for the very insightful presentation. I think I'm going to go away with that graph of, the value of the city actually depreciating like over 90%. That is really scary. I guess the question I have is that how is CFA as a society in Ghana? And I can see that the numbers are growing. I'm just wondering how you are positioning yourselves to be like the leaders in the investment space. Usually I teach my students, or we have been teaching our students for a very long time, that government bonds are the safest until what happened. Yeah. There are a lot of average Ghanaians who are looking to invest, but we just don't know exactly where to. It's usually been like government bonds, and so people think that is safe. But from your presentation, it seems like there are a lot of opportunities. The gentleman who spoke earlier was talking about opportunities. The average Ghanaian doesn't know that. CFA, from what I know, you're supposed to be like the investment people, right? But from where I sit, it's like I'm not really feeling, your presence in Ghana. Until my husband joined this, I really didn't know much. I believe that the average Ghanaian needs to feel your presence.
Yeah.
Let us know, like, apart from government bonds, where if I have money now, I have like 30 years to retire, what do I do? If there's a quarterly something that is coming out, like something periodic that shows the opportunities that different categories of Ghanaians can take advantage of, I think it will really serve the purpose of, like, growing wealth, not only for the middle class, but for everybody in Ghana. So that was what I wanted to find out. How is CFA Society Ghana positioning itself in this investment space? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was a brilliant question. And from your question, and also from an event that I attended over this weekend, I know the women in this country are going to be much richer than the men very soon. What I learned over the weekend is that the women are very savvy and actually are pushing. There are some people in here who are already doing some of these external investment. But I do agree with your first point, which is what I call the CFA Society of Ghana on. Because, we were seeing these scenarios where all the various sort of associations were actually being vocal. And you look around everywhere and the CFA Society was nowhere to be found. And we're supposed to have gone through the best practices and have had like some of these best practice of doing things. But one of the things that I picked up on the back of this is proximity, right? Unless you have been proximate to some of these asset classes, it can be quite overwhelming, even when you do get access to it. So what I'll do, Nana, I think you have to answer the second half of this question, but I will take your details and then we can start sort of engaging in terms of maybe perhaps I'll come and do a presentation with you to sort of open people's eyes in terms of what else is available. Nana, like in terms of reach and making ourselves present as a president, what do you propose? Or what are your views?
Okay, so my president wants me to respond.
Sure.
So, madam, you said you are with the University of Ghana. Okay. So last year, I'm sure you heard of Ashasi beating University of Lagos, Nigeria, and becoming a university that represented West Africa. Is that not it? So our understanding is that we need to take our time. We need to build a skill set. So we've engaged the faculties to help us to groom the next group of people. As for advocacy, trust me, we prepared the paper to advise government when it came to DDE. We were not silent. It wasn't as if we were silent. Maybe you didn't. It was actually published. And was a very good paper of how to solve the problem. It was actually in the BNFT. So it's not that we've been silent. It's just that we recognize that we want to be authentic and our growth must be felt. When we put something out, it must be something someone can bang their hopes on. CFA has been around for over 70-something years. The numbers are not so many because they are gradual. They make sure they have roots. When they speak, people listen. So we just don't want to be everywhere, but we are gradual. So we've partnered with faculty, and I'm sure you know, we've been encouraging people to come and have research challenge, just to make sure that the people hear of us, because it's the future we are looking at. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Jay. Please put your hands together. So, Ajay kept talking about AI. He's talking about the vehicles, even for the babies. I'm thinking about something which gives an opener, which introduces the next speaker, talks about panelists, even guides you to take your group photos at the end of the program. My name is Prince Dagadu. I'm a technology company. You can call me MCAI. And what better place to say it than a room filled with the biggest trustees and fund managers? There's the pitch for my IPO, and very soon we'll be coming for money. So please put your hands together for our speaker who gave us the outlook. In a bit, we'll take a message from the CFA Institute.
Greetings and welcome. I'm Randy Tolver, Managing Director of Member and Society Relations for CFA Institute. I am delighted to introduce you to our brand new digital member experience. This platform is your gateway to the wealth of benefits that come with your CFA Institute membership. It's not just a digital space. It's a dynamic hub where you can easily find the full spectrum of benefits tailored for you. Whether it's accessing exclusive research and data or connecting with your affiliated societies, this platform is designed to simplify your journey. We've listened to your valuable feedback. Many of our members have expressed that they sometimes aren't fully aware of the extensive benefits at their disposal, and even when they are, finding them can be a challenge. This newly launched member experience is our initial step in a multi-year roadmap to add value and provide additional learning and networking opportunities for our members. Our goal is crystal clear: to empower members like you with a comprehensive understanding of your benefits, ensuring you can seamlessly leverage them throughout your career. As you navigate through the platform, explore My Benefits, delve into My Learning, and take a look at the tools available in Career Resources, all easily accessible through the left navigation menu. If you're part of one of our local societies, follow the link to your society's homepage. If you haven't joined your local society yet, discover how to become a member and enhance your network and member benefits further. I encourage you to bookmark this page and come back often to stay current on the growing portfolio of content, research, and tools exclusively available to members. This is a collaborative journey. Your feedback is invaluable as we continually enhance and evolve this experience to meet your needs. We appreciate your membership, and we hope to elevate your experience, help you throughout every moment of your career. Thank you for being a part of the CFA Institute community.
Okay, thank you. Please put your hands together for the Institute. Great. So up next, we'll have the panel discussion, and we're going to try to do some things concurrently. We're going to set up the stage for the panel discussion, and while we do that, I'll read the profiles of our speakers, just so we can save time. So what happens is that I read through their profiles, but then when they come and get seated, we'll mention their names so you know who is speaking at whatever point in time. So the first person I'm going to introduce is the moderator. And please note, I'm reading summarized versions of their profiles because we can have a whole conference on their profiles. So these are very summarized versions of their profiles. So our moderator is currently the manager data analytics at the Electricity Company of Ghana. Prior to his role, he was the finance officer, where he assisted in treasury management process and assisted in the administration and management of its occupational and personal pension funds. He has over 20 years of experience in power distribution business and over 15 years experience as an instructor of CFA and FRM programs. Please put your hands together for the Manager, Data Analytics, ECG, and Vice President of CFA Society Ghana, Mawan Ansah, CFA. Our first panelist is one we've already seen and heard. I've read his profile, so please put your hands together for Ajay Watson, CFA. No, I think I mixed that up. I enjoyed your presentation and the shows. Okay. So up next, we have our next panelist being the head of investment, Africa Region Standard Bank. Prior to this, he was the managing director of Stanlib Ghana Limited and also held lead responsibility for EcoBank's investment management portfolio, where his team managed retail and institutional portfolios. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Ghana, Legon, and a master's degree in economics from Queen's University in Canada. He's a private Investors for Africa Fellow, a Yale World Fellow, and a CFA charter holder from the CFA Institute, the global organization at the leading edge of investment management practice. He's a former president of the CFA Society Ghana and the Ghana Securities Industry Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Alex Asiedu, CFA. Up next, our next speaker is a senior professional bringing over 20 years experience from global top-tier financial services institutions. She's worked with over 20 financial institutions in the US, UK, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Her areas of focus in finance and risk include ESG, treasury, and prudential regulations. She holds an MSc in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University and BSc Honors in Operations Research and Financial Engineering from Princeton University. She is a CFA charter holder. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sandra Villas. Our next panelist serves as the group CEO for Black Star Group, where he spearheads the firm's strategic direction. Prior to joining Black Star, he held the position of executive director and co-headed the capital markets team at IC Securities. With a wealth of experience in equity and debt structuring and financing, he brings valuable insights to his role. He served as a senior fixed income credit research analyst at Cairn Capital in London, UK. He also held positions as a vice president on the credit derivatives trading desk. Very tall profile, as I said. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Statistics and a Master of Science degree in Corporate Risk and Security Management, both from the University of Southampton, the UK. He's registered as an approved person by the United Kingdom's Financial Services Authority and holds certification as a financial risk manager from the Global Association of Risk Professionals. Additionally, he's a level 3 exam candidate for the CFA program. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist, Mr. Eric Appiah. Please put your hands together. The final panelist, currently Chief Investment Officer for EcoBank Development Corporation, the Wealth and Assets Management Division of EcoBank Transnational Incorporated. He oversees the management of about $1.5 billion of assets covering fixed income and equities in Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Benin, Kenya, Cameroon, many countries. I'm not even done. He holds an MBA with concentration in finance and Bachelor of Arts degrees in economics, both from University of Ghana. He holds a certificate in advanced company valuation from Euromoney, a certificate in fixed income simulation from ICAP Training Solutions in South Africa, and Ghana Securities Industry Certificate. He also holds a certificate in wealth and investment management from the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, UK, and membership of CISI UK. He's duly licensed as a key individual and a representative by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority in South Africa. Before I grab a glass of water, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Emmanuel Owusu. Over to you, Marwan. Please put your hands together for our panel, even as they take the session.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the panel part of today's program. Now, I think if you know CFA, we stand for ethics. Now, anyone who's gone through the CFA program, you notice that from level 1, level 2, level 3, at the core is the requirement that you must have as a profession conducts that are ethical. So even though we are talking about where to place money today and hopefully in the years to come, as we all become technology firms, we are very much concerned about ethical leadership and governance. Now, remember, you always work within a corporate environment, and decision-making process can unfortunately appear to be in gray areas. Now, you know we are in an unpleasant experience. We are in uncharted waters. Now, we can't say whether risk-free is risk-free in Ghana We can't say mark to market is a meaningful approach to value assets because people are uncomfortable with that word. Some people lost money because of that. And then we know people don't have faith in our market. So despite all the beautiful numbers, the question is, how do we restore trust? So hopefully, with this very distinguished panel, they will help us to bring back trust in our market. So welcome. My first question actually will go to all of you, but I'll start with the lady, Sandra. So what would you, in your view, describe ethical leadership in your view? And then tell us in a context how over your years of experience you've encountered this.
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Marwan, for the question. I think when I reflect on ethical leadership and I kind of break down what that means, I think it's more important to focus on the leadership than on the ethics element. And what I mean by that is, I think the ethics part of things, it's a very, you can't look into sort of the soul of people or companies. You can't, it's really difficult to talk about what do people intend. I think it's more important to think about what are the controls and the mechanisms, what are the intentional things that they do as leaders. And I was reflecting on, and I'm sure many of you have heard of the marshmallow test, which is, it's an interesting kind of experiment or a test that, was done many years ago, which what they do is they take children, they put them in a room and they put a sweet or a marshmallow on the table. And they say, I'm going out of the room, I'll be back. If I come back and you haven't eaten the marshmallow, you get 2, right? But the child can choose to eat the marshmallow, and it's a very interesting thing. If you haven't heard of it, please do look into it. And what you find is that you see a whole bunch of different actions and reactions from the children, all the way from some of them go right ahead and they eat it straight away. Some of them kind of they struggle with it. Some of them they take a long time, then they finally eat it. Some of them don't, and then they get the second marshmallow when the person comes back in. But what is very interesting is that when they follow, the people the kids who have done this, they find that it's very correlated with future life outcomes, right? And we've had a conversation earlier today. We know in our industry, there are very few things that have a high correlation or are very easy to forecast, but this is one of the things. So maybe you should put all your employees and colleagues through the marshmallow test. But so you ask yourself, what is it that makes someone behave differently? Is it a DNA? Is it their upbringing? Is it a value system? But what is common again, in many of these cases is that it's sort of the controls. It's the active toolkit that they bring to bear to the situation. And I'm saying all that to say, I think ethical leadership is really about kind of putting in place these controls, these tools, these measures, and actually having an outcome that works for most of your stakeholders, that is good for stakeholders. It's not just about what you intend, because we all know, if you go to church, you'll see kind of the same people who are in the news where their companies have done X or Y, and they'll pray longer than you and they'll kneel longer than you. But it's really, I think we need to, and I like to think of ethical leadership as actually the hard tools, the hard controls that people put in place in their companies. So yeah, that's my reflection on it.
Okay, so on this one, I'll give Alex the last word, but let's ask Emmanuel. Do I know Alex is called Emmanuel?
Okay, so thanks for the question. I think within the context of ethical leadership, I'll put it as the core values. Actually, the core values that really define a people or an organization, and within that core values, how leaders take charge in pushing the agenda. So, for example, if as an organization we identify core values as integrity, we look at mutual respect, we look at trust as a business, then how do we ensure that these core values go down to the people or throughout the organization? And I think it's very important to look at it from that angle, that as leaders, how do we ensure that these things get imbibed? And one thing that we typically gloss over is that when you look at the ethics or the values of an organization, it doesn't just start with the people. It must come from the top. And whatever people at the top believe in, they must make sure it goes down and people imbibe those values. And it goes beyond what the regulator will request for you to do. And typically we get it all wrong to think that whatever is inscribed by regulations, what we need to follow. But as organizations, you want to go beyond just that and have things that people can hold you accountable for. It could be down to your morals and all that. So within the context of ethical leadership, I'll say that's my thought, and that's my view on that. Yeah.
Okay. So Eric.
Hello. Oh, okay. No, so thanks for the question, and I was just listening to Sandra and to Emmanuel. I guess for me, ethics is just transparency and fairness. That's how I see it, and it's really not in a document that's written, right? It's really in the people and the values that you bring. But MC.ai, you almost got me into trouble. I'm not a level 3 candidate. I've passed level 2, so please just correct the record. I passed level 2. I'm not a candidate for level 3, so let's just get that one out of the way. But I think, actually, I don't worry too much about ethics, because I think sooner or later it's all going to be automated away. Currently, in most conference calls, there is some sort of AI that's reading the emails, right? Or read on the call that's going to transcribe. It's going to give you an ethics score based on your company's policy at the end of the day. And you know, these things will just happen. And I think when we think about ethics in the old day, it was like, oh, somebody from HR had to come and give you a whole long speech. But sooner or later, all of these things will effectively be automated into the current systems and policies that you have. Just like you have ESG scores, you would have ethics scores. And so the monitoring and the effectiveness of it, I think, will come with time, with technology. So I'm not too worried about that part. But again, I really feel like it's something that you have to instill in people. And the best way to monitor it will be automated. So not too much of an issue, because it can be monitored and dealt with, but it's still really important for companies.
Okay, Alex.
Ethical leadership, right? I think it's about doing in the dark what you would do in the light. So you know that nobody's looking at you, but you know that you're doing the right thing. And so it's about values, it's about transparency, it's about fairness, it's about putting people first. And although I love Eric a lot, I disagree with automation making sure that ethics comes into practice the way we want it to be. I mean, look at our computerized school system. We computerize it, and yet it's worse than. So we rise and fall on our ethics and the way we are, and the way we think, and the way we do things. And so if we don't have the heart to be honest people, to do the right things, even when nobody's looking at us, no matter how advanced we are, we will fall. So that's what I think ethical leadership is about. And just to add to what Sandra said, it is good to have, I used to think that ethics would be inborn, but I later realized that you also need external guardrails to check you. So she's right about an environment providing that heartbeat where you do the right thing. So that's also important. But I believe that it first starts from the heart.
Okay, so if I take what you just ended, I remember when the regulator issued the mark-to-market directive. The question I asked, which markets informed the valuation? So let's ask ourselves, do our boards really reflect those values? Which I mean, if you take into consideration It was a policy implemented, but the board was to take a decision. So the question I ask, I mean, this goes to you, Eric, since you believe automation could help. Does it suggest that then the boards no more are relevant? Or if in the case of the regulator came to you and said, implement something, and a customer is going to have his assets wiped away, I mean, wouldn't you have to put a face to it?
Sure. So maybe I'm not the best example for this, but we started market to market around 4.5 years ago for all our mutual funds. Even for our pension funds, we do mark them to market, but that's not what we show. And interestingly, we had a few conversations with the regulator at the time we were marking to market, and let me be diplomatic. They were not sure about how we were approaching it, but I think in the end, they came around to the way we were thinking, which was a difficult decision to make at a point in time where everybody's posting relatively high returns and, you know, you're taking mark-to-market losses. So there's nothing wrong with the two methodologies. It just really depends on which market you're in and what you have to do. But we went more prudent and we're marking to market around four years ago. So, but from the board, but again, it was how we started it and how we wanted it to run. And so for us, it wasn't that difficult a decision. I don't know whether for other fund managers it was, but it was something that we knew we had to do from day one, because it meant that, interestingly, when the market was sort of started to move downwards, we started to adjust because we had to take those losses. And so we had to adjust the portfolios accordingly. And I think it took a few people a bit longer to do that. But for us, it wasn't really an issue.
No, so the next person I'm going to ask is Emmanuel, because the letter came from EDC. So he has to tell us.
Well, yeah. So the role of the board in all these conversations, I think for us, where we think governance is very, very relevant in the work we do, a lot of the discussions we had around mark to market really centered on the board taking the lead in the discussions. I mean, beyond the regulator coming with a directive. And it's something, in fact, we had actually been working on for quite a while on the approach to go to market with mark to market. Because obviously, if you look at our business model, and I'm sure that that's a bit different from what Eric runs, where we are quite heavy on retail. And when you are taking an approach of that nature, the repercussions are quite steeper than what probably Eric will feel in his business. So you have to make sure that from a governance point of view, the board is actively involved in the decisions, because bear in mind, for the type of funds we run, the ones that are unit trusts, the decisions emanate from the fund manager, and the fund manager board is involved. The ones that emanate from mutual funds, which you also have in-house, you have to rely strongly on the boards of the mutual funds. I think in it, what we realized we needed to do was to make sure the communication was well done and tighter enough. Because once you get a communication wrong, then the impact, the unintended consequences could be a bit larger and bigger. But we had to make that tough decision because we think it was the right thing to be done at the time, given that a lot of the instruments, government instruments, were underwater. So, I mean, from that perspective, I'll say that yes, the board's role was quite relevant, even though we had the regulators' involvement in the decisions we took. Yeah.
So, Alex, you are like a grandpapa of this industry.
Master, I'm not that old.
I mean, I'm not in the case of age, but someone who has had to start a firm, and now you are part of a group. Now, I mean, tell me, is it that easy to be ethical?
No, it's not. It's very difficult. And I mean, we all know it's not easy, whether it's in our personal lives or at work. So it's difficult, especially in a space, in a geographical space that typifies corrupt practices. It's very difficult. And so you need to, it's almost like swimming against the the tide if you want to be ethical. And that's how come Sandra's point for me is important. So two core things. It has to come from the heart, and you also need guardrails or governance systems that will check you. But if an entire market is doing things that are untoward, it tends to be really difficult for a particular actor or player to go against that. And I don't like to use the mark to market as an example, because to be fair to the market, there are bigger, more vibrant markets in Africa, I don't want to mention it, that are not marking to market. People are not used to it. I mean, and who would have thought? What happened with our debt distress? And I know what AJ is saying, that one of the key things is that our CD goes down all the time. It's a constant in our markets. But you would almost call our debt defaulting a black swan event. People were not expecting that for fixed income and money market. So with mark to market, but if you take examples like guaranteed investments, for example, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. And that's where I think a lot of people or a lot of financial market players or investment firms went wrong. So in a nutshell, it is not easy, but one has to be able to swim against the tide. Where I used to work, everybody used to guarantee investments like 10, 15 years ago. And then about 10 years ago, and we're making good returns and good money. Good returns always translate into good money, right? And then about 10 years ago, I remember reading an article in The Economist, and it said that firms that guaranteed returns were acting like people picking nickels in front of a caterpillar. I mean, the truck, a caterpillar. Yeah. And if you'd be able to pick the nickels, but if you slip, your entire thing is gone. Not just your arm, your whole body. And you know that until about 3, 4, 5 years ago, the capital required for an investment firm in Ghana was about 200,000 cedis. And it did not have to be cash. Yeah, that's how low down we went. And people were guaranteeing investments upwards of portfolio size of about $1 billion and more, 200,000 cedis. So there was a day when we went for a board meeting and the role of the board, and we decided that, look, we're having sleepless nights, so we're going to stop. So we wrote to all our clients, and people did not understand that they would bring money to you, and you could tell them that you are not guaranteeing them this, you are not sure whether it's going to go up. So we lost about half of our clients that year and lost quite a bit of business. But hey, it meant that when the first financial crisis came, the banking crisis came, we're just flying high. So in a nutshell, it's not easy. It takes bold decisions, and it takes being taken for a fool in a market where people do corrupt stuff. But if you hold your head high, I think that you can do it. But it takes the buy-in of all stakeholders within the firm, from the board right down.
So, Sandra, I come to you. When he ends by saying it takes the buy-in from all stakeholders from the firm, how do you nurture a culture within an environment like that? I mean, people don't want to put their money in the bank. People are comfortable hiding it somewhere. I'm not saying someone would take some, but no one wants to put the money in the bank. How do you create a culture where people are sure that it is better to do right?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. I think, if I look at so many of the clients that we have as a consulting firm, I also worked in banking for years, but my clients are banks, asset managers, insurers, financial sector regulators. And I think what is true is that it's almost like too much discretion is the enemy of morality, because, and that's why I go back to saying you need to have some controls in place. You need to have very, very clear tools, governance mechanisms that people stick to. Because if you leave it up to people and you kind of hope that this culture, pervades everything, you can be sort of disappointed. So I think what we see in institutions that are quite good at it is that they have creative guardrails. And, it's not to kind of treat people as if they don't, treat people like children, but you have to have proper kind of regulation. You have to have tools. You have to actually train people to understand what is the right process. You have to know what the kind of the processes are. It's not fun stuff. And it's quite easy to kind of go and give an inspirational message. But I think you do have to set the tone from the top. Tone from the top is critical. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with people. One of the fundamental issues we have, not just in Ghana, but in many other markets, is that a person's career life cycle is often, when they think about the issues that they're going to have to address, the impact of the decisions that they make, people make a very practical decision that if I'm not around to bear the consequences of that decision, really does it, I mean, people make very different decisions based on the term and the impact in terms of short-term versus long-term. And it's really not, even at the board level, it's often not necessarily in the interest of the institution, because board members are also people. And they also know, that they may be leaving an institution. So I think it's important that we follow, where possible, kind of rules, frameworks, and the institution sort of kind of agrees and signs up and espouses those things.
Okay. So Eric, now you run the firm, you're the CEO. So I'm sure you were expecting this question. So how do we go about it? Now, and besides, you've made us know that CFA is forming your mind with the kind of ethics that they are putting you through. So how do we do it? You have the asset management code also available to you. So how do we do it?
Sure. As I said, for us, it's about transparency, and I say fairness. I'm just going to say something, and maybe because it's a financial sector, there's something that disturbs me a little bit about our financial sector. And I think when we're talking about ethics, we like to focus on maybe, let's say, our relationship with, boardroom and all of that. But there's, the high pressure sales tactics that banks typically employ for their relationship managers. I think it is an ethical issue. There are people who will cry when you come. So on the 30th, I don't go to the bank, because if you go and take out money, somebody has to go and make a report that they lost some deposits at the end of the month. And that puts so much pressure on people that they are not able to think clearly about what they do. They are mentally struggling because every time they see you, they can't even offer you, it's very rare you have a conversation where they're like, let's get you the best loan. No, it's just about your deposits. The drive for deposits is absolutely, it's actually, for me, it's one of the toughest things, because we manage a lot of mutual funds. We manage a lot of pension funds. And at the end of the month, you can see people quaking. And again, I'm just saying that because I think it's, when we talk about ethics, we are just looking at, conflicts of interest and all of this. But that is something that I think as an industry needs to be tackled. The high pressure sales tactics from that particular sector, where we see a lot of people struggle mentally. On our side, in terms of what we generally tend to do internally on those types of things is, when I joined, the vision of the company was to be the best investment bank across Africa. And in one of our sessions, I think we just had a group think, and it was very clear to us that what we had to do was to empower everybody. So we want to have an investment industry where there's 100% transparency. If you go on our website, we give you so much detail about our mutual fund, pricing, holdings, everything. It's just there. It's really important that, clearly when there is very little information, there's arbitrage. One of the things we're working very hard on, and hopefully we can deploy this year, is a live market for people to see where bonds trade. Because we believe that lack of transparency means that government debt is completely priced wrong. There is such an arbitrage between where people may deposit money in a bank and where it actually ends up at government, who is the lender of last resort. And that delta is way too big for our industry. And what does that mean? We can't get mortgages, we can't get loans, people are defaulting, people are running away. It's just so hard to live. And I think that for us, I try to look at things very simply. Transparency in our market helps our investors. You would hear people say they would buy a bond at the 33% yield and sell it to somebody at 17, 18, 16, 15. That spread is just way too much. That cost gets passed on to us through various means, right? So you might say, oh, I got 33%, but the government's borrowing at 33%. That 33% is what they're using to fund some kid who's going to school. And the next year they have to borrow money to fund that kid again. And we all know what happens. So we look at the debt cycle and everybody's like, the government's borrowing too much. But that's because the cost of debt is completely mispriced. We really have to pay attention to it. I'm not saying it should be zero, but there is an arbitrage that exists in our pricing of this particular security as the benchmark security that really has to be looked at from very many angles. And I believe the more transparency we have between brokers, the markets, etc., the smaller that delta will be, and hopefully rates come down so that everybody can go and get a mortgage, get a car loan, etc. If we don't do this, it's really going to cost us into the future.
Okay, so Emmanuel, now are you putting pressure on your people since you need liquidity?
I think for me, and it comes back to the conversations we've had around ethical leadership, it's quite important to carry everybody along the journey. So, I mean, we understand what has happened in the economy. We've had a jolt with how government securities have moved. The question is, this is a black swan event, like Alex rightly put it. How do you deal with a black swan event? Do you go back to your employees to give them a lot of pressure to do what they need to do in terms of raising more money, or you tackle it from a two-pronged approach? I think what we've done and looked at successfully is how do we engage the regulator, because this is an industry-wide problem. So we need to have an industry-wide solution to deal with such a problem. And I think that is where we've been quite focused our energies on in carrying everybody along to understand that, look, we have to solve this problem as a unit rather than on an individual basis, and setting those sort of high targets Eric mentioned that usually you find in some of the financial institutions. And I think when we look at it that way, we tend to now begin to appreciate the need to have a holistic approach in dealing with the situation, rather than looking at it from an individual basis and putting pressure on employees in the organization. For me, that is not the sort of leadership or ethical leadership we are talking about.
Okay, so I think I have about 10 more minutes. And in the 10 minutes, I'm sure there's supposed to be questions, unless I am mistaken. So I know the conversation has been a bit more down because we are now thinking, are we really doing the right thing? But Alex seems to have painted the right picture. If I stick to my values, chances are that I would stand out. So, Alex.
I just wanted to speak to what Eric was saying about bankers and deposits and about the transparency. So for me, I think the solution is 3 pillars: transparency, leadership, like what Emmanuel said, and then enforcement. Okay. The other day I saw that Men's Gold had an advert about a year or 2 ago. And I was thinking, in which country does somebody cause such a mess and still have the balls, to advertise again? It's because he's walking free. We don't have enforcement here. When people know that their actions come with reactions, it lowers the level of rot that we have. So enforcement is important. But to do with that leadership, look, when a fish is going to rot, it rots from the head. And so we can speak all the high finance, etc. But if we're walking as leaders and we're not doing the right thing, no matter what we do, our followers will not do the right thing. There was a time I was on leave and I got a call from our head of ops, and he said somebody had brought him an envelope and he was laughing. And I asked him how much. It was quite an interesting amount of money. And it was from a bank, Eric, that's it. Because they wanted deposits, right? So I said, okay, you should keep it in the office. So they brought it to 2 of them. So I get to work And about a few days later, a nice young girl, well, not that young, from a bank, Sandra, she had your name, but I wasn't you. So she walks in with somebody, so two ladies, and the normal, oh, we want the process, blah, blah, blah. Then after a few minutes, she asks the younger person to walk out. So I'm just with her alone. Then she has this big envelope. And she said, oh, this is for you. So I'm asking her what it's for. She said, oh, for your deposits and investments. And I said, but why is it for me? And she said, oh, to thank you. I said, but that's the work that we do. I'm paid for it. He said, oh, are you new in town? Yeah, that's what she said. That's what she said. I was actually surprised. That's what she said. And she said, but almost everybody else is doing it. I said, well, we don't do it. And I was broke too. I said, well, we don't do it. Then I realized that. So I realized that she was from the same bank that had offered the ops guy the money. So of course I said no, and then she said I had embarrassed her. But anyway, a few days later that bank collapsed anyway. But the point is that don't guess the name of the bank because a lot of banks collapsed. but the point for me is that the ops guy did not take the money, even when nobody else was looking in the dark. His bosses were not there, and he called to report it because he knew that in the firm nobody else was doing it. So for me, it's important that we model the kind of ethics that we want to see. That's how come the whole country is going down. Even the pastors are doing the wrong thing. So if we don't hold our heads high and say that this is wrong, I'm going to live the right thing, then no matter what we do, things are not going to work. So I'm just saying transparency, yes, ethical leadership, and then enforcement. If we're able to do that and get a bit of more regulatory robustness, I think our market should do well.
Thank you. But I can't end. Okay, sorry, Eric, you have something to say.
No, so very interesting what you mentioned, because some of the work we do is we've tried to really understand the behavior. And last year, was it the year before, I was lucky enough to go to the house of a chief. Now, there were a few things that happened. When there was not one of my colleagues, but another gentleman started to speak, the chief immediately stopped him and said, "You didn't say please." So I now understood why in Ghana, most people before they speak will say please. There is an interruption to what is going on, so you have to say please. So I found that interesting. And then the next thing was, what did you bring? So culturally, we have it in us. Like the hamper culture in Ghana is the strangest thing. But it is really important because when you go into those settings, you really get to understand why those things are important. You know, you've come to a place where you're coming to, I guess, get some advice and all of that. And so there's an expectation of that. Doesn't mean they'll treat you any differently, but that is what has permeated and, you know, we call corruption. And I think we have to be, what's the word? There's some nuance here, right? That culturally, it's very important. It's almost impolite to not offer. If you've ever bought land in Accra, the Numo Mashis and those people who it's a given. How you manage that against the ethics that we know and understand, we have to look at it and try and maybe you know, because it, as the person said, are you from outside town? Because this is how our culture is. So culture plays such an important part of what we do on a daily basis. So I was only saying this to say that, yes, we might say it's corrupt, but you also have to realize the importance of those kinds of things. I mean, a lot of us travel, but you would not dare come back with an empty suitcase because you have to have gifts for everybody. Not because you're trying to influence them, because it's seen as, you know, a way of maybe sharing your joy or whatever it is. So there is some part of it that is, yes, corrupt, but there's also a part of it that is genuine. There are people who genuinely want to give back because they're very glad, but we have to find the right balance. Not that if somebody offers you, they are automatically corrupt. You also, as you said, you have to have the right systems, procedures, recording all of these things. But I just found it very interesting that, you know, we went back, we were looking at data, we're trying to really understand that thing of gift giving and receiving, and it's really imbibed in our culture, and we have to try and marry that against what is now, I guess a move towards more transparency and ethics. But I just don't want us to just say like, that part of our culture is terrible, but it's very important. So.
Okay. So, Sandra, I'll give you the last word. And I'm sure you're wondering why I'm favoring Sandra. One, she's the only lady. And two, she got her charter the year I actually started CFA. She got her charter in 2004. Now, ESG is big. And I'm sure some people were surprised that Ghana's downgrade ESG contributed to that. Now, since you are a consultant and had been advising people, is there a way you could at least offer some advice in that area?
ESG, there's a lot of hype around ESG, as we all know. This ESG is kind of taking over, and even, in the work that I do, it's becoming such a huge, ask from the institutions that we work with that want to kind of get this right. And I think it's an area that's rife with a lot of misrepresentation, greenwashing, all kinds of different color washing. Now even the terminology is hard to keep up with in the space. And I think you are in this time when there needs to be some consolidation, and you are seeing that, where there's lots of terminology, lots of frameworks, lots of different ways. Even if you look at the investment industry, there's lots of different ways in which you can do ESG. There's kind of positive screening, negative screening, ESG integration, and so on. So I think you are in this almost like a mad rush around ESG. I think eventually things will settle down in terms of expectations in the industry. And I think it's a good idea to keep up with all those things. One of the difficult things now is that a lot of things are voluntary, and you know my views on that. I think when you make things voluntary and people have to choose whether or not to do them, and if the regulation is not clear, policy is not clear, people will do all kinds of things. So we have a way to go before things kind of reach a steady state and settle down. I think it's good to keep up with the industry. I think in many ways, what's happening is the kind of capital globally is going to be allocated more towards sustainable assets. That's going to happen. It may not happen in some geographies as fast as it does in others, but eventually, everything is connected. And so globally, we will be affected by that as well. As you mentioned, this was a factor. I think it was not as big a factor as many people kind of say in Ghana's downgrade, because I think there's an element of it being somewhat, in a way, the ESG factor from the ratings agencies was also then informed by the debt levels, but that's another conversation. So I think it's something you need to keep up with. It's an area that will consolidate and converge and become clearer.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would have loved the conversation to continue, because I see everyone is quiet, like you're in church and you're preaching about righteousness. But fortunately, I'm sure some people have some questions on their minds. So at least I'm permitted to ask 2 questions, so that at least we can recognize our charter holders and let people eat, and then say that we kept them and starved them. So at least, does anyone have a question? Okay, good.
Thank you. So my question borders on ethics. So from my understanding, it's easier to be ethical when it's clear if it's wrong, right? So maybe from Alexis' example, somebody offers money. It's clear that it's not ethical. But there are, as you started, there are gray areas. They are where the right is, what I think is right is different from what he thinks is right. So let me give an example. So for fund managers who have experienced this issue with mark-to-market pricing, the value of people's investment fall for mutual funds and quality investment schemes, you have a responsibility to all unit holders. People's values are falling. A retiree walks up to you and doesn't get why, as a fund manager, you cannot do something different from him as against a younger person. But you have a responsibility to all your unit holders as one. And the thing is that as in a situation where the value of the underlying assets are low, when you pay one customer their actual value, you throw the loss to other customers. And there's a problem, because people think because the person is a retiree, has a shorter lifespan, something must be done for the person. But as a fund manager, you have a responsibility to all investors. This is where I'm a CFA candidate. I'm hoping that after I finish it, I will know the answer to this. But there are CFA guys here, so I'm hoping they have an answer for me. Thank you.
I'm not sure why I should be the one answering. but I think it's clear. In this instance, it's not your money. Your responsibility is actually to unit holders, not to your firm or to the old man. So you have to treat them all equally. So even though he's a retiree and he has probably a shorter lifespan, you can't favor him. It's wrong. And what has helped me is, when in doubt, seek guidance. And it also helps if your firm comes out with a clear policy, so that you know that at least the policy will be your guardrail. But your responsibility, again, is to all unit holders. So I know of instances where if the amount is small, you still pay him his mark to market, then you yourself use your own money to balance it. That's if the amount is relatively small. But your responsibility is to all unit holders. You can't favor him.
I think Alex has probably put all in context. Just a twist that I was discussing with Eric on the side, just to say that, government actually had a preferential treatment for those that are older, just to recognize that their situation is quite peculiar. So even the treatment of retirees was different from how government treated other bondholders. But that notwithstanding, if you are in doubt as an employee, I think the best thing is to consult and reach out. If there's any gray area, you have any challenges, I think the best thing to do is to seek some level of clarification from your superiors. But always remember that your ultimate responsibility is to unit holders when you are dealing with a collective investment scheme. Yeah.
Since we don't want to run. So, anymore? Yeah, my own Emmanuel.
Hello. Okay, so there's a question to the panelists, and I want to know if fund managers, right, by straying away from your aching objective, can it be classified as also not being ethical, right? And I'll come back. I'll explain it further. We have a situation in this country whereby we know very well that government overexposure to government treasuries is going to give us problems. So there's a need for diversification. Unfortunately, we still see fund managers moving straight to these government exposures. And anytime an alternative instrument is offered to them, I think the perceived risk to government is seen as too risky, right, when compared to government. So in my case, for example, right, we know about DDEP just happened. So technically, and government is still running deficits. However, fund managers are still quite okay to still keep on bullish with government. I don't know where the bullishness is coming from, but still, if you see, they are still bullish with government. Maybe more bullish on the short term. Maybe the risk is on the longer term. But then you offer them alternatives, and they will come up with 1,001 questions why the alternative is not working out. But then the government's product is not seen as such. And a clear example of why I'm saying this is that, we are in a market. We are supposed to create an industry. We are supposed to let our presence be felt. Sell side can never work if we don't have a corresponding buy side. Neither can buy side also achieve its objective if we don't have a solid sell side. So you bring a company to the market. For example, we bring Casapreco to the market as a sell side. We have a company that has existed for almost 35 good years, has never defaulted on any of its obligations before, has revenues growing year on year because it's in the defensive industry. And you have all the banks trying to run to it. It has never, in terms of credit reference bureau, you check it, it's always A-listed for the banks. And you bring it to fund managers. And they will give you 1,001 reasons why they think that the company is not bankable. But you see, when that happens, then a lot of companies say, hey, if this company is not really being given funds by the fund managers, how are we, the ones that are perceived as a little bit less blue chip, going to be given funds? And I'll end right now. No, I'm passionate about this. I'll end right now. You see, this company, this very hotel that we are in, right, and some other 5 hotels, during the COVID time, really went through a lot. We structured a transaction for them whereby they can raise finance, because we believe that if the organic growth of the market or the revenue of the company is not impaired, then if it is a financing problem, then it can be solved, given the various financing products that you have. None of the fund managers was willing to throw their weight behind us. We went for private placement. We eventually got an investor. And I have to be proud of the fact that all the 5 hotels, the big hotels, including this very one, were able to really turn around the prospects and are now even growing organically or funding themselves organically. So if we decide to see everything as too risky and give the money to government, over concentration on government, isn't that also really unethical to some extent? Thank you. I'd like to know.
So I'll volunteer and answer then the rest. So your question was long, but I think I have a short answer. On 2 planks. One, the role of a fund manager or the trustee is actually not to build the industry. No, it is to make money for his clients and himself. So let's not conflate the two. That's the first thing. Second thing, any fund manager sitting here, and I think there are a lot in the room, will tell you that the Ghanaian prefers the certainty of fixed income or money market returns to the uncertainty of alternatives or anything else, period. And so selling that uncertainty, like alternatives, etc., to them, to your clients, can be a really difficult ask, which is why fund managers tend to default to government, although government tends to be uncertain. And with that, it wouldn't just take fund managers who correct that. It requires a concerted industry effort to educate the market. You yourself, if they gave you an investment in a hotel in the Shire Hills vis-a-vis government at 45, which one would you take? That's the bottom line. I don't know whether anybody else. So another part is, if government stop crowding out the private sector by engaging in less fiscally irresponsible activities, interest rates would go down, and then investments like yours would be more interesting. So really, it's for government to answer this question.
So yeah.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment, and I think I may be paraphrasing or rephrasing what Alex just said. But I think what happens is that when people perceive a credit risk, they shy away, but when they're more likely to take a market risk than a credit risk, and they view, I think that's another way of saying that the sort of the fixed income and those investments are kind of, people feel more comfortable when they perceive a credit risk.
Okay.
And just to add to that, fund managers are just advisors, as we've come to understand, for pension funds. So you really have to speak to the trustees because they are the ones who make the decisions.
Okay,
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
So, I think one other thing we also have to understand that is that fund managers are serving various purposes. And it comes back to profiling the investors we deal with, and I think Alex mentioned that. So whatever investment solution you have for your customers must reflect their risk profile. And obviously dealing with the pension trustees, we see that their profiling is to have some level of certainty in the returns they generate for their clients. So usually when you make recommendations of other viable investment opportunities, you hit a roadblock. So that also creates that level of gap in that. But that notwithstanding, changing this culture or attitude will require all of us, our involvement. And I think it begins with some of the activities that the CFA Society is engaging in, and other associations as well. So it's more like a collective action to be able to change that narrative. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all for having the time to listen. But this is what I'll say. Transparency is actually what we've been asked to do. But apart from that, our industry will grow if we in this room are ethical. Thank you.
Can you put your hands together? Let's appreciate our panel. That's great. So while we are at it, we need some help to clear the stage. DJ Fuse, you can give me something in the background while we do that.
Yeah. You are my fire, the one desire, believe when I say I want it that way, that we are two worlds apart and reach to your heart when you say that I want it that way. Tell me why.
Okay. Thank you, DJ Fuse. Okay, so there's a point where we honor quite a number of people. And as you might have seen through the program, would be honoring our new charter holders. But before we do that, I'm going to invite for the president of the CFA Ghana Society to do something that's very important. Please put your hands together as we have our president come forward.
So good evening to everyone. So we chose, this special occasion, to honor our first president of our society, Mr. Clifford Mpare. Right? He got his charter holder in 1990. How many of us were born? All right. So with the deepest gratitude and admiration to Clifford Mpare, founding president of the CFA Society Ghana, your vision and leadership laid a foundation for our growth. Your dedication guides us to keep pushing towards great height. Thank you very much for your extraordinary contribution and enduring legacy. And to present the award, I would want to call Alex Asiedu, to help present, this token to Clifford. So, I think because of the...
Oh yeah, yeah, boo, I like it. No, I can't deny it, but I know you can.
So a round of applause for Clifford. We held several meetings in his office.
Please, let's face the cameras to your left. Yes. Can we get a pose for the cameras, please? And kindly hold the plaque up. Yes, thank you. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen.
Didn't I know it was love? Let me think I holding me close.
Lovely moment.
Gonna do? I let myself go. Now we fly through the stars. This night will last forever.
Actually a surprise, right? Awesome. So from this point, we're going to proceed to present the charter, and we must note that these people have already been awarded the charter by the institute, so it's an evening of recognition, just to, you know, give them that graduation feel. We don't have the gowns, but your suits and your dresses look nice, and our media team will be happy to capture them as well. So to help us with this part of the program, it gives me joy to welcome somebody who's been very instrumental in this society. He's the chair of our advocacy committee and head of financial market sales West Africa, banks and broker-dealer sales at Standard Chartered Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Jojo Kakra Banaman, CFA. Good to see you, Jojo. Welcome. So I'm going to mention the names of the awardees. Okay, so Jojo, please join me here just a bit. It's a time to congratulate our people, and while we would be congratulating them, we have a congratulatory message from the CFA Institute, and we'll take that now.
Hi everyone, I'm Marg Franklin, President and Chief Executive of CFA Institute. It's my honor to be speaking to you today to celebrate this incredible achievement. Earning the CFA Charter requires dedication, tenacity, and commitment to our profession. In being here today, you've shown that you hold all these qualities and more. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to each one of you. I remember the day that I earned my charter so vividly. Hold on to that feeling, it's quite remarkable. We know that the journey to earning the CFA Charter, so I would also like to congratulate your peers, friends, and family members who supported you through this process. Now is the time for reflection and celebration. Thank you also to our society network, which is so instrumental in aiding candidates around the world through the CFA program and so many important programs beyond that to support investment professionals in their respective regions. This year, we celebrated 60 years of the CFA program. That first group of candidates could never have imagined the way the CFA program would expand globally and evolve over time to mirror developments in the financial markets. Growing from our North American roots, today the CFA credential is a truly global and widely recognized as a mark of grit, expertise, and of course, excellence. We now offer the exam in more than 160 markets in all corners of the globe, and nearly 200,000 charter holders proudly display the letters CFA next to their name. You are now one of them. The charter signifies not only an individual's commitment to the profession, but also to uphold the highest standards of ethics through their daily work and to always work for the benefit of their clients. In earning your CFA charter, you too are bound to uphold this commitment. The field of finance surely does not stand still. Throughout the 6 decades of the CFA program, we've continually evolved the curriculum, ensuring that charter holders are educated on how markets are changing and how client needs may be impacted as a result. I proudly reflect upon how far we've come as it relates to the CFA program, the global recognition, the rigor of the content, and the noteworthy investment professionals who hold the credential in all corners of the financial industry. I want to again extend my heartfelt congratulations to each one of you who can now consider yourselves among this group of investment professionals. I'm always thrilled to welcome new charter holders to our community and cannot wait to see where your careers will take you. No doubt to exciting, unexpected places. Thank you again for allowing me to address you all today. Be well.
So Jojo will take his position. We have the charter certificates here. So at this point, I'm going to mention the names of the awardees, and please do your part by putting your hands together as they step forward. The media team is in position and ready to go. So our first awardee is an assistant manager, financial risk management with KPMG Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together, and I'm going to mention their names with the CFA, behind it. Probably out of a mic for the very first time. So if the Guinness Book of Records people are around, there's a recognition ton. Our first person, Melody Asari Amwa, CFA. Okay, so we'll move to the next person. He's the head of Treasury and Investments with Prudential Life Insurance Ghana. Please put your hands together for Stanley Solaga, CFA. Congratulations, Stanley. Lovely. Yes, a smile to the cameras. Beautiful. So you take a solo moment, please stand, you hold your, yes, let it face. Yes, let it face the cameras. Lovely. Put your hands together. Right, so we follow the same template. The next person is Manager Capital Projects and Infrastructure, PwC Ghana. Please put your hands together for Theophilus Forson, CFA. Nice. The solo moment. Okay. Thank you. The next awardee is Credit Manager, Corporate and Investment Banking, First National Bank. Please put your hands together for Elias Emisa, CFA. Congratulations, Elias. Okay. Thank you, Elias. Next person is Chief Investment Officer, CIO of Wangara Green Ventures. Please put your hands together for Isaac Asmeni, CFA. Congratulations, Isaac. Super. So the rest of us know what LinkedIn is going to look like the next couple of days. Yeah, you know it. I'm thrilled, I'm honored, I'm privileged. Yeah. We need to create new adjectives for LinkedIn, Okay, next person, Portfolio Manager, Petra Fund Services, Sylvester Kofijan, CFA. Okay, Sylvester is not here. The next person is Gold Reserve Analyst with the Bank of Ghana. Please put your hands together for Caleb Nila Ekwe, CFA. Yeah, he's counting the gold in the vaults at the Bank of Ghana. He's a busy man. Okay. Next up, Manager Financial Risk Management, KPMG Ghana, Selasi Asmini Kanda, CFA. Okay. Next person, Head of Investment RDF Ghana LBG. Angela Akosia Tlufio, CFA. Okay, we'll move to the next person. The next awardee is the Fixed Income Portfolio Management Officer with the Bank of Ghana. Please put your hands together for Melanie Nana Sama Okran, CFA. Okay, next person. This one is here, I know. It's the Head of Finance, One Africa Technologies UK. Please put your hands together for Wise Anku, CFA. Congratulations, Wise. Okay, so you take your moment. Thank you, Wise. Congratulations. Our next awardee is Investment Manager, Business Modeling and Valuation with the Jospon Group. Please put your hands together for Courage Alexander Zoiku, CFA. Congratulations, Courage. Okay. So just as he poses, the rest of us should just prepare our congratulations and get to those comment sessions because we have a lot of congratulations to do this week. Congrats once again, Courage. The next awardee is the Private Investment Sorry, I'll take that again. Is the Private Investment Specialist. Please put your hands together for Bertrand Olivier Wendlasida Topsaba, CFA. Please put your hands together. Okay, so he's watching via the live stream. Congratulations. Yes, well earned. I understand he's not in the country. Okay, so you have some DHL to do. Super. Our next and the final awardee on my list. Okay, I'll mention one name. I understand the person is also not here, but just to honor and make sure it's on record, is Belinda Ya Tiwa Yeboah, CFA. Please put your hands together for her. She might be watching. Yes. And the last one to be presented today is CPBB Business Finance Partner with Standard Chartered Bank. Please put your hands together for Theophilus Ni Aite Kwefio, CFA. Congratulations, CFA. Okay, so just stay here. Yeah, you take your photo. So while he's taking his, you know, the A in CFA is analyst, right? So a little bit of analysis. The name that appears more than once, only more than once on this list is Theophilus. In case you are considering changing your name soon to increase your chances. I didn't say anything, but maybe you should consider it. Please, Jojo, please, I'll still need you around. Theophilus and all other charter holders here present, please come forward for a group picture before we go.
Going on right here, a celebration.
Okay, please don't go. Can we have, so Jojo, please join me here. Let's have only the charter I think you had your moment some years ago. Yes, so we also have more women in there this year, albeit they not being here present to savor this moment. We still appreciate that, and we are hopeful that we'll have more women joining them in the coming years. Okay, do we have that picture? Okay, can we please have the board members join them? CFA Society board. Yes, kindly join them. I'd like to get all of these out of the way so when it's time for dinner, I don't become a thorn in your flesh, right? Thanks for understanding. Okay. Can we change the background image?
It's a celebration. Let's celebrate. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's all right.
Okay, please don't go. Okay, so thank you very much, board members. Charter holders, please stay. It's your day, so please stay. Everybody wants a picture with you, right? So can we have our committee chairs? Committee chairs. Chairman of the various CFA Society Ghana. Okay, they are all here. Good. So new charter holders. Okay, thank you very much. Please put your hands together for them. Thank you very much, charter holders. Yes. Okay, I think we still have the backdrop out there. The media team is available. Get your charter certificate and please enjoy the moment. Right. I think for panelists, we had their photo during the panel, so I'll skip that. We'll want to take dinner now, and our ushers will guide us to do that. There's enough to go around. I think we'll begin with the table of the board members, go on to the next table, and then we'll continue in that order. DJ, you to give us music, yes, while we enjoy dinner. It is a networking night as well, so please use this opportunity to get some deals, get some CFA material. I mean, some, not the curriculum, please. Let it not be said that you took that from Prince Agadu. You can get other study links and all of that for your own good. Yes, so please, hello. So we want to keep it orderly. You know, we have quite a small space, so please let's give priority to our board members and then the rest of us will follow. Of course, feel free to network, have a conversation with somebody.
It's true. Feel my juice, and I'll be all you need.